Hey, you are listening to Oh Crap Parenting with me, your host, Jamie Glowacki. This is a podcast for conscious parents who drop the F-bomb a lot. Hi, guys. Welcome. Today, I'm bringing back Chantel Zimmerman.
Yes.
Chantel runs a forest school in New Jersey, and her Instagram is Sensory Garden and Play. She's been on the podcast before, but a long time ago. She was part of our pandemic toddlers course. And Chantel has the best way of being with kids, right? But philosophy. And we started to talk before recording this podcast. And I was like, okay, here's why I wanted to talk to you again. And I was like, you know what, screw it. We need to record all of this. And so I love, even though her Instagram is focused on her forest school, I encourage you to go check it out because there are so many ideas of like, oh, I can do this with my kid, or this is how they learn. And so, Chantel, why don't you jump in and tell everybody a little bit about you and how you ended up with a forest school in New Jersey? Because I think people think forest schools have to be in the middle of the woods.
Right. And also not in New Jersey. So our organization is in West Milford, New Jersey, and we cater to ages 3 to 11, and we're a seasonal based program. And so it's interesting because when you hear about like a nature-based program or forest school, you don't think it can be here, but it really can be anywhere. And that means it can be in cities. It can be anywhere that there's a natural green space that any child can learn. And for us, we're very lucky. We have 150 acres that we are, leasing, but it is just magical. And to me, I think when you think of nature-based learning, you think of how to be inspired. I think that's what the environment does. It inspires you. You ask questions because nature is really the teacher and the teachers are really facilitators. Right. And when you think of it that way, that is the curriculum.
Right. And you didn't start off with 150 acres, right? Like you started off with something.
So we were at another location and then we moved to this location and they are a campground and we actually rent a piece of it. Well, obviously we go on the trails, but our provocation area is not 150 acres, but we are able to go on 2 major trails and it's beautiful. It's just stunning.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, it's great. We had talked about this last time too, is people do tend to think like we're adults. So when you say forest school, we think forest, right? But you said nature, any green space, because if you think, especially the littles, I mean, I talk about it all the time. I used to go on walks with Pascal and Lord Almighty, we could get stuck like just one house away from my house. There was an anthill, then there were bugs and branches and, there's so much even in just grass, right?
And so that's the thing is that, for parents, we're adults, so we want to get to our destination. Like we want to go for that mile walk. Kids don't. They want to stop and look at every single thing. And they teach us indirectly to slow it down. Right. And so when a child's like, oh, look what I just found. And you look at, because you're an adult and you're like, that's a rock, but it's shiny. Right. It's shiny. And you're like, you're right. Like somewhere we lost that discourse, but a child will bring you back if you allow it. And then they're like, look at this leaf. And we're like, that is a cool leaf, man. That's really good. But it's adults don't think that way anymore because we're tired and we're moms and there's a lot going on.
I think too, you said the huge thing, which is I've said it many times on this podcast is for us, it's about steps. We want to get that mile walk, right? Which is important. We need physical movement as well. But I was just reading this book and the title of one of the chapters was Focus on the Process and Not the Outcome. And that's what we were starting to talk about before we pressed record, which is I'm finding more and more, and this has been for a couple of years now, and it's really been since the pandemic, it's really escalated, which is almost like a checklist, and I tell people, especially kids who are struggling with potty training, and I have parents like, you've got to lean into the process and your kid, not just the pee and the poop on the potty, because I can get that. Anybody can get that with coercive measures, enough candy, but it's the process, right? And so one thing that I'm finding throughout all my work, both parenting and potty training, parents are burnt out because they're rushing through to get to the outcome. So they're trying to check all the boxes. They're putting their kid in the center of life. Focusing around the child instead of bringing them into the fold. And you started to say that you saw something by Brene Brown.
So it was last week. Somebody said to me last weekend, she's like, how do you do it all? And I'm like, I don't. Yeah. And she wanted this, I guess, an expectation that I was going to say yes. I'm like, I don't do it all.
I get up at 3:30 and I do.
I don't. And so when our business started taking off, I really was concerned for like our family unit. And so one of my non-negotiables is dinner.
Mm-hmm.
That is a non-negotiable for me. It's just a must. And so what I started realizing is, okay, we have to come to terms with what is important to everybody in our family for everybody. And so I'm also a mom of twins that they're 7. So I'm not in the realm of high school kids or kids who are in a lot of sports. So this isn't for everybody. But I will say, if all the academics and all of the sports and all of the work, and you're not connecting with your family and your close friends, something's amiss.
Right.
We need to re-look at it and reevaluate it. So Brene Brown was just saying, and I'll try to put it on again on my stories. It hit home. Like I guess, put it all into words of what I have been feeling for a year.
Right. Succinctly, when somebody does that, you're like, that's it. That's the thing.
Those are the words. You got the words out and then you said them. And now that means I get it. So what was important was that she said there's, child-centered families, and then there's parent-centered families. But she's like, what about family-focused families, where, you have to kind of evaluate the season that you're in, right? If you have a brand new baby and you have an older child, that child can't do 3-4 sports in a season, right? And so I think the idea that they have to go to every practice, be the best, they have to have a lot of friends, got to look great. It's a lot of pressure, not only on the child, but I think a lot of it is pressure on the parent, because most times it is a well-meaning parent who wants their child to be perfect in their best way. However, they are burning themselves out. And I think that when you were talking about the pandemic, my opinion on that is everybody's life stopped. There's a silver lining with the pandemic, was just I felt that parents were more empowered with their children's education. Like they questioned it. Once you question something, I think that's money right there. That's it. And then now, because everybody is quote unquote behind in grades and not doing well enough, or all these things. And so what happens, I think the parents are trying to play catch up when there is nothing to catch up to. Yeah. And these are all of us. We all have these guilts, especially as a mom. You run with guilt, but there has to be a time where you stop. And whether it's once a month, you reevaluate, how are you doing? What are you doing for yourself? And to me, I think that's really important. We are constantly told to work like we don't have children.
Right.
And that's not, for most of us, it's not the reality. And then to raise them like we're not working.
Right.
And so there has to be a time where somebody says, stop, and let's just breathe for a second as women together.
Yep.
And we're all doing our best in the season, and you are enough. Yeah. And hearing that sometimes is like a permission slip. I think it's so important. I personally said this last season, and, I had a camp. And when we have camp, my kids aren't doing anything after. First of all, we're 10, 20,000 steps in. We're a nature-based camp. There is no reason to do anything else.
Right.
Why do we have to? Unless somebody's coming over, we're having dinner together and connecting. But rat race is something I've been very intentional about, because I know I am a very type A person, and I can fall into that. Got to do it all. Instead, I just started saying, no, I can't. And my kids can't have play dates. And it's not you, it's my schedule, because it is. And I'm sorry, but my kids, after so many steps in nature-based camp, you're welcome to all the parents who send them, because they went to bed at 7:00. They're tired. There's nothing more to be needed to do. And I think that's the thing, is that all these wonderful parents are not putting themselves in the equation, whether you're single or you're married. You are the parents. You need to stop for a second and breathe and connect with your real friends.
You matter, because you're running the ship. And if you go down, but I also I wanted to say a couple of things. First of all, I'm like you. I had to intentionally bow out of the rat race because I'm competitive. I'm going to win. I will win the rat race at the sacrifice of myself and my kid. Right. But I also think this whole slow down and sports. If I could, I always say, if I had a magic wand, I'd bring back neighborhood play. But if neighborhood play came back, a subsequent thing would be less sports. The sports thing is out of hand. And I I've said it so many times on this podcast. I don't know when it happened. When I went to school, there were kids in band, there were kids in theater, there were the kids who just hung out, there were the emo kids, there were always androgynous kids. Like everybody had their group, but nobody tried to do all the things. And so like travel sports just wrecks families because your dinner's
I think that's what it was. It became travel sports. And while I'm not knocking,
it became a moneymaker.
Well, but I think the problem is that you're well-meaning moms and dads who are trying to do it all. But I would like to offer everybody one thought, just a wondering thought. At 8:00 at night, how do you feel? How does your heart feel?
Right.
Stop for a second and really like digest that. Like, how does that heart feel? Does it feel accomplished? Does it feel so exhausted you can't move? Because we all have those days, and I will tell you, I'm one of them. But when I always say the rule of 3 in my house, if I start in one day losing 3 things, that's when I know I'm not thinking, I'm moving, and I am too like fast, a squirrel. Yeah. And so I think there has to be a level of evaluation for every parent. So like anybody that's listening to this, listen to think of the next season you're in, like let's say fall. How do you want that fall to look? Right. How do you want to, instead of what do you want to do, like, how do you want to feel? Because we plan these events and Facebook has us liking what you're interested in and what you're going to do. Right. That's great. How are you going to feel in this next season when your kids are either back in school or you're homeschooling? Because homeschooling is becoming a rat race as well. And we're seeing it more and more. So like, how many dinners do you want to have a week? How many things do you want to feel towards your family and not do the checklist of the bucket list of like, we have to do this summer, we have to do that. I don't want to do any of that because I can't.
And I think there's photo op bucket list. Like I always say, like the best thing I ever did was give up the apple picking photo op because Pascal got allergic to apples. I'd eat so many, I get diarrhea. I was like, it's hot, it's sweat. Like come on. Like I was like, and just to post on Facebook to keep up with everybody else doing the apple orchard photo op. And I was like, I'm done with this. But I wanted to circle back really quick because you're talking about actual seasons, which I like. Because when you first said seasons, it depends what season you're in. I thought you meant like season of life, like where are you? And I think that matters too. One of the things about having babies later is my season of life was menopause when my son's season of life was puberty. Dude, that's against the natural order. You can't have that many fluctuating hormones in a house. So if I have any advice for parents, have your baby younger because we didn't plan on this nonsense. But I do like that too, because when come December, everybody gets into the hygge, right? Hygge, I think you say, right? The coziness of winter. And then we have fall. Like, what do you want that to look like? And so I think I always keep stressing this with everybody listening to this is we get options. The worst thing that happens to us, I think, as parents is get on that rat race treadmill where you don't even like what's happening, but you're doing it. We're seeing this now with the buck up against young use in social media. Like nobody likes it. The parents hate it. The kids hate it, but nobody wants to be left out. So nobody's getting off that treadmill. So we have to all get off of it together. But you get to have these intentional moments in your parenting and like construct it. It doesn't look like 5 family dinners on Saturday and Sunday. We go do things, like you can actually plan that.
And I think that is my biggest advice. What do you want the fall to look like? What do you want your winter? What do you want Christmas to look like? And not in the sense of like the aesthetics. How do you want to feel? I think it comes down to, I'll be honest with you. I think 2 years ago, a very good friend of mine gave me advice and she's like, you're going to get so busy, you're not going to want to host. I have to tell you, I don't host holidays anymore. Yeah. And I know that's for some people that's like, well, it's family time. No, I'm not doing it because I'm not going to feel guilty because I'm exhausted and now I have to host everyone. And if everyone's coming over, then we're either catering or everybody's bringing something, but I'm not going to do it all like I used to, right? And you have to decide what's important to you. For me, I don't do holiday cards anymore.
Right. I ditched those too.
I think the girls were maybe 2, maybe 3. And I'm like, why am I doing this? And I loved receiving the cards for anybody that gives them to me. But however, for me, I just don't have it in me anymore. I don't have it in me to do all the things that personally are wonderful, but it's taxing and it's another additive stress. Got to get them out by November 25th. Make sure they're out. Got it. I just saw, and it's great if you're a photographer, but they're doing Christmas minis already.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
No. So
I know that was a huge load off me. And I always tell people, I said, I love getting them. And if
Me
you
too.
want to take me off your list, I understand because some people are strict about that. But I was like, my birthday is December 9th. So it falls right in that zone. And so I was like, no, it's so relieving to make those big decisions. One Christmas, there was so much family drama happening that I was like, hey, Pascal, you're older now, no big man's coming at night. So, hey, do you want to go to Nashville? We went to Nashville. We took off to Nashville for Christmas and we had a blast,
Well, I think that's what it is. It's really, if you stop and you said to a mom, and I'm going to say mom just because that's, how.
Usually the default parent who does.
Right. So if I say to a mom right now, get a piece of pencil and paper and what do you want your family to feel? How do you want the next season to feel? Not look like.
Right. Not photo ops. Right.
Right. No. And then what is it that you can do to take those steps? Like I already know what my fall will look like. I know the busy times in the fall. And I know when to plan. So for me, because my kids do share me often, and during camp, it gets very busy. One of the things that I've implemented for almost, I think, a year now is a monthly, and it's always a surprise, a monthly sleepover. It's just the girls and myself. It becomes larger than life for them, right? Because it's intentional. It's wonderful. I hate sleeping on an air mattress. My back hurts. It's awful. However, you're building core memories that don't cost anything. I'm not doing it for a photo op. I'm just doing it because I hope that when they're older, that when they think of a sleepover, they're like, my mom slept with me for, a once a month, the girls, evening. And I always make it special. So that has taught me that less is more. And then when you're in that moment, do more that feels right.
Right. Cut down the shoulds, cut down the idea of, the photo ops. And it's just become ubiquitous. I mean, I've literally had the thought like, well, if I don't post it on Instagram, did it happen? Right. But I just did a podcast about people feeling so bad over the summer, you'll see accounts that post about like slow summer. We're just, having a slow summer. And then parents get their shackles up about, well, I have to work. My kid has to be in camp. And I did a podcast that like, even if you have to work, same thing, you can have a camp out in your living room. The kids think that's the bee's knees,
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be these large things, but also like if you guys don't know Chantel, I think the phrase that I associate the most with you is how does your heart feel? Like that, because that to me has like actually since we first spoke on my podcast a long time ago, like that is a leading compass for me now. Cause I'll like check in and be like, how does my heart feel? And sometimes it's a color, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or sometimes it's a music or something, but it's definitely, and if you guys just even take 1 second here, pause and think of how do you want fall to feel? That's going to be a much different compass than activities. How does it look? What's my photo album going to look like?
And I think that's it. It's that we as just normal humans, we want to do all the things because we don't want the kids to miss out on. But I offer the thought of, are they really missing out, or are you as the parent missing out on the feeling behind it?
Right.
And I think a lot of it, and this is, I hope this hits home. A lot of it is because we live so separate from families. Like I don't have a village.
Right.
So that's another part that I think is we don't have that. When we don't have it, it feels like, wow, man, if I had just extra help. But I'm going to say this because I think it's important and it's more business, but I think you can adapt it to your family life. I had a business coach. His name is Dan Martell. He is aggressive. He is so good.
Oh, I just started getting his emails. That's funny.
He's no joke. I adore him. Aggressive is a good word. And so he says, buy back your time. And I started thinking about that, like in my life. What am I doing? Because he said, if it doesn't give you trigger curiosity, if it doesn't give you that why are you doing it? Right. And that really stood at a place where I'm like, why? This is that rat race and internally that you have of wanting to do all these things. But if you stop and you write down, how do you want the next season to look? I would guarantee that your listeners would change Christmas. It'd be the first one they would go to. Why? Because what family doesn't get along, but you have to go? No, you don't. You don't have to go. You don't have to go. Here's your permission slip. You don't have to go. Why? Right. Chantel said so. You don't have to go. You don't have to cook.
Yeah.
And everybody can bring something cost effective. You can cater. I don't know, but I just stopped doing things that
and you're going to disappoint people. And one of the best things I've ever heard in my life, I don't know who said it, was some great person. I'd rather disappoint you than disappoint me.
And
I have to live with me.
But I also think I don't want to miss out, because while I'm doing all those things, I'm not there watching them or being intentional with them.
Right.
And so that's something to think about as well. Here's your permission slip. You don't have to do it all.
Right.
And for me, November 1st, I send a text message to family and I'm like, hey, this is a season. Let's get together when you're available. Let's not try to all get together on one day, because it doesn't work.
Right.
It doesn't work. And it's too many people you're trying to like, please. I can't do it. I can't do it all. So like, moms, stop trying to do that. Call me, text me. Yeah. I'll give you a permission slip, because it's becoming to the point where we're having all these great friends, like as parents, but are they? If something happened to you right now, do you have 3 people that you can go to without no judgment? That's your circle. Yeah. That is your circle. And that doesn't mean
that's where I think burnout from the pandemic first started, because we switched to digital and we've been convinced that our digital community is the same as our in-person community, and it's not. 100%. We've also been convinced, like I deal with older kids, with my son, we've been convinced that digital meetings are better than hanging out at the mall for teenagers, and it's not. Teenagers need unsupervised, undocumented time alone, and all kids do actually, without being hovered about. So that's where I think the pandemic switched things. Yes, it made us question education for a lot of people. It also brought, for some families, they got very, very close, and they were like, wait, do you know how many times I heard people say, my kid loves this? It's like they don't want to even do activities. And I was like, Yes, they don't. Finger on the nose. They don't want to do all these activities. You do. And I think it's so worth exploring too, like what's behind the motives, because I think there's fear of missing out. I think there's fear of being behind, with sports. Now sports is so competitive.
And I think it's the fear of a parent wanting their child to have friends and be included. And that's great. I get it. However, what about if your child has 4 really good friends? Is 4 a good number? And I think that's what it is. I think that they want their child to be accepted and included and have friends, and that's great. But is it? Like, I'm sorry, I could tell you right now, I have 3 friends that if something were to happen, I'm calling those 3 friends. I'm not calling all the other people, because that's just not my circle.
Right.
So, and I think we have to identify for children, like, who do you pick as a friend, right? Do they fill your bucket? Are you filling theirs? Are they turning on your light? Are they dimming it? Right. And I also think teaching children how to be a good human, but how to be a good friend, instead of having all these friends that it's void. It really is.
Well, too, now that you say that out loud, I also wonder, like, so much, because one of the things I always talk about is a lot of times if you haven't done your personal work, you're going to parent from your wounds.
Yes.
And I think that inclusion, so many parents were left out. So now they're going to make their kid popular, and it was really wild. I went to it was like my 30th or maybe 25th high school reunion. I'm coming up on my 40th, if you can believe that. It was wild to me because we all were out to dinner, and I was just kind of silently observing, because I was like, oh, look at the jocks talking about how smart their kids are. Look at the smart kids talking about how jockey their kids are. And I was like, oh, they're all parenting from the thing they didn't get. Right. And they can't wait to show off the thing that they were deficient in. And so I think that's another, I think it's questioning your motives of why you're doing it, especially if you're doing something that you don't like. For a lot of people, this is going to be news that, like, wait a minute, I get to not like things I'm doing in parenting, But I think if you do know, like, you feel that, I've had to feel that way sometimes, because Pascal, when we homeschooled, single mom, like, we were kind of more attached to people than they were to us, because they had 4 kids. They were their own party. I needed that social connection. And so, like, sometimes I'd be like, I don't even want to do this, or I'd have to shut my mouth about certain things because I didn't want to wreck the relationship. And it always blew up in my face anyway. But I think that for a lot of parents too, like, knowing that, like, you can choose, and you, like, just sit with a minute, and what don't I want to be doing? What could you release?
I think a lot of it that has to do, at least from my point of view, currently, I feel like it's because parents, we're all creatures that want to connect with somebody, right? So whether you want to connect with a spouse or you want to connect with a friend, it's really important. But I also think there's something to be said. When men connect, they connect around sports, a hobby, something that it is towards something, right? Women connect together. This is why you have your soulmate friends, because we are having a real conversation about our feelings and we're discussing the hard stuff. And when you do that with another mom, that's life, because she gets you and you're understanding that shit that you're in right now and that storm of parenting. That's why I think women need women.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important, but I also think there's the fallout, because if you're really close to a mom and she's doing 4 things, well, then you have to do the 4 things.
Right.
You have to be intentional of saying, hey, I'm going to be your hype girl. I gotcha. I'm not doing it. Right. And it takes a lot of practice. I'm not fully there, but I can genuinely say that this last year has taught me I want my daughters to act in a way where they are authentic for themselves and who they are. And I can't want that for them if I'm not doing it.
Right.
So they will hear me say, and I'm very, very careful, we aren't going to do that. We have been running all day. It is time to decompress at home. And let's find something we can do. Right. And that's what we're going to do. And at first, they're like, well, why are we going? Because it doesn't feel right to keep going when we're exhausted.
Right. And I do think too, like, just to kind of throw this into the mix, is that, you know, we're not saying this in a way of like, because some of the gentle parenting, or I don't know how else to call it, but the pendulum has swung where like every kid has a little feeling and we think that's authentic and we cater to it. Because there are certain things that, like, you know, funerals, wakes, things like, you know, whatever, the way you're like, you're going. I know you don't, I know it's uncomfortable. I know it's going to be hard, and we're going because this is what you do for the people that we love, you know?
But there goes what we were talking about. Like, how does your core look? Is it child-centered? Right? Because there's this thought that, you know, children always come first. I think the basic necessities of a child come first, but that doesn't mean that it's all for them all the time. There's a time where, whether you're single or you're not, you have to pay attention to the connection you have with the person you're with. And I think there's something to be said about the connection you have with yourself and to your closest friends. And when we're not doing that, I think there's the issue. I just think that you have to ask yourself, how does my heart feel? How do I want that next season to feel? How do I want Christmas to feel? How do I want to shape this in a way where they're not missing out? They're not going to miss out. It's you feel they're going to, but if you're doing something with them, they're going to be really happy about it.
And and I think so what you're saying is, if you really lock into what your heart feels, that will guide you, because then and like you said, it takes practice, right? Like it's hard to dip into that for some people, but when you ask yourself what your heart feels, you're not going to have the FOMO, because you're like, wait a minute, I'm going to have this expansion and this warmth in my connection with my kids and my immediate family or my immediate circle. Yeah. Why would I go like spatter my energy all over the wall for people that I don't get any joy back from? So then that takes care of the FOMO. I think people aren't checking in with their heart to begin with. So then
I have JOMO, the joy of missing out.
I know. I have that recently too. Once you get good at it, I think you're like, I'm not doing that.
I'm not. And so it's funny because my friends, my children's friends, their parents texted me and they wanted play dates. And I was just in the season where I couldn't. And so at the end of camp, I texted all of them together and I said, hey, here's the worst planning play date mom, raising my hand. Can we now have a play day all together? Because I just can't do it all. And I think some people, and I always say, guys, it's not you, it's me. It really is. And I also have to watch how I'm raising them, because the last thing I want them is to feel like they have to do it all. They have to please everybody.
Right.
And no, you're going to honor your body. You're going to honor your heart. Does this feel good? Do you want to do this play date? No. Okay, let's unravel. Why don't you want to do it? So I didn't like this and that. All right. Now the next part is, when you see that friend, you say, you know, I don't have to be your friend if you're going to be unkind.
Right.
Period. And that's something that has taken me 40 years to learn. of, wait,
And
why
how
am
much
I
therapy?
right? Therapy, $500.
And I still shake and cry when I say it.
Exactly. And you have this guilt because I have this guilt where like, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. Right.
Right.
But I also think, and this takes practice, if you want a real relationship, friend or not, you have to get, and you have to have uncomfortable conversations to be comfortable.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
if you can't have them, and it's not, it could be because of you or it could be the other person, there's something amiss there.
Yeah.
Because if you can't, and I tell the girls too, I'm like, or my husband, I'm like, listen, let's go. We're going to have an uncomfortable conversation. So we're going to play on the same team.
Yep.
Right. But it's going to be uncomfortable.
Yep.
So what are the parameters? Because what I'm about to say, you may not like. So do you need a minute? Adjust yourself and we'll come back. And that has been, I think, the best communication because it gives him a moment. But now I do it with the kids too. And I do with kids at school. Something happened. We're going to have an uncomfortable conversation.
I love that. Tim Ferriss actually has said that your life is measured in the amount of uncomfortable conversations you can have. And I'm really good at them, except in a relationship that I get scared of losing. You know what I mean? And then you start curbing yourself and it always blows up on me. And it's like, oh, I hate that. So I really try now to be super authentic, like as soon as I can. Sometimes it takes me a minute to figure it out, land on it. But yeah, because I think people are so afraid we're all people pleasers and we don't. Mm-hmm. And once, and especially like, I know I've gone through this with friends and they're having a hard time with their spouse. And I'm like, I've learned that I have to go to the worst case scenario. I have to look at what would it look like if this person leaves? Right? Because that's what I'm afraid of.
Right.
Would I be okay? And then 99% of the time I say, yeah, because I'm fucking pussyfooting around. I'm tiptoeing around all these other things. So actually, that's what happened. My sister and I didn't talk for years because I was like, I'm done. Why am I doing all of this work? Like, I'm not saying half the things I say and you're still mad at me. I might as well say the things I need to say.
Right. But I think that's the hard part because I think for me in general, I'm an overthinker. So I will always go to the worst place and then you feel like you did something wrong. Right. And, you're trying to like hash this out. What really grounds me is how would I want Luna and Danica to handle this? Yep. In their minds, in their heart, how would I do this? And one of the things that I do is I talk it out. I always tell my daughters, we don't talk about people. The only time we talk about people is to understand a situation or to figure out a solution to help them. Yep. We don't compare. Right. We don't judge. We don't gossip in this house. If you want to vent, you can vent to me. You vent to one person and let it out because there is a process and a part of venting that you need a soundboard. Yeah. But the constant talking shit, I'm not doing it. Agreed. I'm just not doing it. If it's work related, I think that's where I've learned that because you build something that hits hard when you put everything into it. So I think for me, that's the part I'm learning where I'm trying not to take things personal and I'm trying to use the same practices. But as a female, we run differently. Our hormones are, it's just who we are.
But it's also like, oh crap, potty training's my baby. When somebody comes on Instagram, one asswipe will come on Instagram and say something negative, and I'm like crying. Like I get like hurt because it's like my baby. It's like you just insulted my kid,
Right. No, it's the same way I feel about business. So yeah, I'm not saying that you have to be forceful, but I think if you start practicing of like, hey, we're not going to talk shit about anybody. We're going to talk about how to understand the situation, how to help it, maybe understand why the person is doing it, and then let it breathe and either it goes away or you turn around, right? Yeah. So like, it depends on how we handle it. And I think all females or all moms feel like you just want to connect. And I think we are losing that because of trying to connect with everyone. And it's not the case. And I think that you also have to find the people that are real. Yeah. That have the same, like, hey, like we're going to be different and that's cool. And I'll support you. I have a few friends that are not outdoor people ever. Yeah. And they're like, we'll support you. Don't ask us to go out there. And I'm like, great. I'm not your shopping friend. I'll support you. Don't tell me you're going to go to the mall. I don't do malls, but I love you. Right. Right.
It's so interesting because recently I had a bit of a hard time in I said my council of women. I had 4 friends who like were making decisions on my behalf, and I said, the council of women decided that this X, Y, and Z. And another friend of mine said, I don't have a council of women. And like, literally this has given her a midlife crisis because she's reevaluating. She's hundreds of people that she knows, lots of, we all do like 4-H, lots of gossiping in the communities. But when, it comes down to brass tacks, she didn't have anybody that she could reliably count on or vent or not, like you said, no judgment or take charge sometimes. Sometimes you've got, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm being blindsided. And they're like, okay, we'll be your eyes for you,
I started using that that term at work. So I said to the staff during camp, I said, everybody has a different point of view. We need to pick each other's blind spots up because we're not going to see them. This isn't a gotcha game. I'm not trying to be like, you forgot this. No, because it's not like that. If you're in that kind of work environment, change it. Let's stop with that. You're not an authority to say like you missed this. No, blind spots. What are my blind spots? Right. What are your blind spots? Because we all need that six, that watch. I'm a cop's wife, right? Somebody has to watch your six, right? So like that's part of it. If you're constantly, not feeling like that person has your back or it's a gotcha game, maybe that's not your friend. Right. If they got to constantly, correct you, moms, that's not it. Like, it's not. And I just can't with that anymore. I won't even entertain it.
I think this is so wild to me, Chantel, because like, I honestly thought like we were going to do a podcast about like more like activities and things you can share with your kid to be more connected, which is great. But this has turned into like a different podcast, which is we are part of why we're so burnt out. And this is one of my theories. I'm just working on parental burnout, and the factors that go into it is digital villages instead of in-person villages, and how to be a friend and who is in your tight circle of friends. And we're all different. We have different friends that we show different sides of, shopping friends, nature friends. But it is so important because that's what our kids are losing as well. And so I think after the pandemic, just everything digital upticked, right? And so I think even parents who typically weren't doing screen time will do more screen time, or you get your tweens who are now texting, and it feels like you're more connected, but we're more alone than ever before.
I think the key word there is what I keep going back to is connection. Intentional connection. So there's somebody that I follow, and I was doing it back a few months ago, and then I dropped it. It's a daily practice board. And so you put down the things that you do, whether it's, whatever grounds you and settles you and really brings you back. Man, I love that board. Every day, whatever I do, if I work out, I go to the sauna, I do this. Because then when you're constantly checking or looking at the things that you do, your daily practices that give you connection to not only others, but to yourself.
Yeah.
Man, that you shut down that noise of the society of saying you got to do it all. You really shut it down real fast because you're like,
it's so funny we're talking about this. You and I are like soul sisters.
I know we are.
Because I am doing a practice of groundedness. And one of the things I realized is and I was just going to do a whole podcast on this, which I still might. The worst thing we ever did was put everything into one device, because it's your time, it's your clock, it's your weather, it's your camera, right? It's your pictures, it's your music,
camera. It's right? Your camera, yeah.
Camera and all of these things. And so even if you're like mindful of your social media use, which is great, you still pick up that phone. So I've been going 4 hours in the morning without my phone's in another room. It's on airplane mode, and I'm not, because once you open that, and I realized one of my energy drains was friends. And I love my friends, but I've got 8 group texts that just devolve into silly memes, which are funny, but they're still taking my focus. They're still taking my connection away from my life. My connection with Pascal, now that he's 18, is not locked in anymore, but there is the connection to my life and my home and my kid and my dog. And that, when I tell you this changed my fucking life, like rocked my world at how much peace I have, how much quiet I have. I've been driving without listening to podcasts. I've just been driving in silence, and my mind shakes out. Like, your mind needs idleness. And that is what helps with that groundedness, because you open your phone, you have now opened the door to the world. The whole world can come inside. The weatherman, everybody, there's too much noise. And so I think that's another component of the disconnection, right? And it's so, it's like multitasking on steroids, because how many times you pick this freaking thing up? Maybe you're not using it. Maybe you're just looking at the time, but now you've just gotten disconnected by the colors, by the device in your hand. Your kid sees you pick up that device that you don't want them using, So it is. It's a practice. It's like you've got to practice these moments of groundedness. And what does your heart feel like in there? Because like I said, I've been walking around with this glowing fucking expanding heart that I'm like, oh, I didn't even know I had this much space in my body and in my brain, you know?
Mm-hmm. And I think if everybody just sat and kind of evaluated or did a list of, hey, what are the things that bring you to a place of creativity and joy?
Yep.
What are the things that bring you to peace? What are the things that I feel like, for me, that center me? And I think center is a different word for everybody, but those are the three things. And if you write all them down and you see them on paper, and then you say, okay, what activities does our family do that align with this? And then you could do this with your children too. So my daughters, and I knew the answer, I had them do their love language. Yep. And I wanted to know exactly what their love language was. And it was funny because it turned into this huge event and we were laughing. But what I got from it is that we were very intentional on how we did it, right? But I think it also brought us a sense of connection because you're doing a love language with your children. Has anybody thought of doing a love language with their friends?
Yeah. Yeah.
How can I love you the way you need?
Yeah.
How can I support you the way you need, not the way I think you need, right? And so I think that if we start having these real questions of your love language as a friend, I think that's when we come back to one and we come back to real connections. And again, find yourself the people that can have these really uncomfortable conversations, because those are the people that are going to show up for you and you're going to show up for them on a very different level. Not the people that, hey, you want to go pick apples? Our families will all go. Great. And you have a great time and everything is wonderful. Kids are running around. Oh, great. Did you guys ever sit down to have like that real conversation?
Well, and I think too, what brought to mind, you said something kind of key, and I'd like to circle back to that because parents are, when you want to, let's say you want to have a conversation, you just said, sit down with your child and have a conversation about their love language. A lot of parents I work with recently are like, it's about getting the love language. They're like, I found out what my kid's love language is. And you said, me and the girls had this beautiful connection in finding out the love language, the process to these things. I also wanted to ask you, because you've said it so often, and I want to just get super clear. Let's talk about the word intentional, because some people misread intentional as, okay, we're going to sit down and play and I'm going to stare at you because I'm looking you at the eye and in the eye. And aren't we getting connected? Like intentional isn't quite.
So, right. Like
intensity.
That's why, right. So that's why I said the word center is very different for everybody, right? Because what your center may be different. And I've seen people saying like, I'm really centered. I'm like, but are you? Are you? I don't know.
To the left over there, maybe. I don't know.
So we have to define it, right? So you have to have these, again, define it with your family. My husband is not a talker and he'll tell you, but he has grown so much and he has really, if I say like, we're going to do this, he's like, all right, because he knows that it's for the better of our family and the best for the girls. Yep. But I think intentional is, for me, when I find the joy in what I'm doing. It is an intentional feeling. I stop, I see it, I feel it, I smell it. I know that this brings me so much joy that's why I think what I think people are missing. They're doing it to do it. They're not doing it to hold space. So like a daily practice board is only good if you are trying not to check it all off. Right. If you're going to try to check it all off, you missed the point, right? That it's not the boat left. Right. The reason you're going to your daily practices is to ground yourself and to say, hey, like, this is what brings me home. It'll make me a better mother. It'll make me a better friend. It will really solidify everything, my whole family, right? Everything that we do. But I think sometimes you said something, and I think it's worth revisiting. The idea of we're different friends with different people. Mm-hmm. So work Chantel is very different, right? I'm in charge of a lot of kids, a lot of stuff in the background, a lot of staff. So when they see me and I am literally running at 500 miles. Like it's no, but the people that know me know that when I'm in my space of friends, I'm not that chatty. Right. And they're like, well, why are you so quiet? Because I've been talking all day. Right. Right. So like, and then the perception is, oh, you're like that all the time. No, I'm just a mom. Yeah. I'm just a mom and I'm a business owner and I'm just doing my best and this is my best. And if it doesn't look like what you thought, maybe you don't know me. Right. Maybe the idea of me, but you don't know me. And I think that's in reverse. you have to find the right people in your life, and you have to have these conversations, and intentional conversations where you're finding joy and learning about them.
Right. Right. I
Not
find that
just
I find that in relationships to be really hard because I think it all depends on how sort of wounded the other person is, right? Because I've always said like some uncomfortable conversations throughout my life have been shot down because it sounds like conflict to people, and I'm like, I love you. I want to stay right here in the room with you, but this needs to be talked about. And you can get angry, and I can get angry, but we can still love each other, and we can work through this if we're calm, curious, and connected. Right?
We're on the same team. We just got to figure out the game.
Yep.
We got to figure out those rules.
I like that when you said your family talk, we're on the same team.
We're on the same team. So like, we're going to do this. It's going to suck, man, but we're going to do this, and we're going to be cool about it. We're going to fight fair. So we're going to have a disagreement. We don't use negative words, no belittling. And I think you should always start with your children. I feel this way, and I have my daughter's practices because it's not point of view. This is my feeling. Maybe it's not the way you feel, but I'm just letting you know my feelings. So this way it's not an attack, and you're just really kind of shedding the uncertainty of it. It's where people get defensive. No, I don't want you to feel defensive. I'm just telling you how my heart feels right now.
And I'm telling you, I've said that to so many people. I'm telling you, so maybe you're aware of it. You're not in charge of fixing my feeling. And, my feeling is not fact. My feeling is valid, but my feeling is not fact. My feeling is, and that's what I teach Pascal too, is like, my feeling is through the lens of a 56-year-old woman who's been around many blocks. Your feelings are through the lens of an 18-year-old boy who's been through a couple of blocks, so they're not fact. And the truth is a Venn diagram, right? The truth is always in the middle there somewhere. But, and I like intentional, if we go back to the word intentional too, I think some of this is, like you said, there's the intentional part of your feelings, but there's also some intention that has to go into crafting logistics. Mm-hmm. How many dinners do I want, and how many, like the other day, it was funny because I knew I was feeling disconnected from Pascal. He's got a car, a job, a life. Like he's flown the nest, even though he's physically still in the nest, and we check in, but I was like, I want to hang out with you, but we can't decide on a movie anymore, and I said, okay. And it was almost one of those things of like, all right, well, you just go do your thing. And then I said, hey, we haven't done ice cream for dinner all summer. And he was like, yeah, the dog jumped up and we went and had huge ice cream for dinner. And, and it was like the best. And I was like, my intentional was that I really wanted to make something happen. Mm-hmm. The thing that happened was a surprise, but it was just me and him. And so it was so great. But I wanted to tell parents, like, I think this list that you're talking about is so fabulous, but here's the gauge. I always say this. When you talk about how your heart feels, you will know it because you will feel like the best parent in the world. You're like, that's the mom I want to be. I want to be that mom.
Okay. So I said the other day, gosh, I wish I had a tail. And my daughters knew exactly what I meant. And my husband looks at me, and it was an episode from Bluey. And the mom's like, why do you want a duck cake? She's like, because my tail wags. Because she found the joy in it. That just because it doesn't have. So I said, every time I say to the girls, I'm like, I wish I had a tail, because they know at that moment I'm excited. So it could be the smallest things, and it doesn't have to be elaborate. People are going to hate me for what I'm about to say, but my daughters are very bougie when it comes to food. I have gotten great eaters, but oh my goodness. So the other day I said, what are we doing for dinner? You guys, this is your night where you help. So we were cooking, and of course they get into it. So it becomes very intentional. They take out their grateful jar, because we have this thing, how to be grateful during dinner. So they take it out. She's like, let's do linen. And I'm like, sure, on a Tuesday. Okay, bring it all out. And then she's like wrapping it up, and she's making nature little things, and they're setting the table outside, a lot more elaborate than I thought. She's like, this looks stunning. It looks like we're in Spain. Let's cook something like if we went to Spain. And I'm like, okay.
It's Tuesday.
It's Tuesday. But the point was, it could be simple as where you're setting a table. So when you think of like the holidays, why do you set tables? And you make them look pretty. You make them so it feels good, it's decorative, it gives you the feeling of Christmas. Why are we not doing that all day? And I'm not talking about exactly setting the table, but why aren't we feeling that and acting towards, like if we're setting the Christmas table?
Yep.
Right?
Totally.
And so I think that's what we're missing. I think that if we started acting like how do we want to see that Christmas table? Right. And with all the beauty and all the decorative, that's where the money is, because our sleepovers are nothing but just an air mattress that kills my back, all their friends are stuffies. It's just, that's it. And there's no big thing. It's just us connecting.
They
And
call it use the good soap. Use the good soap, burn the good candles, right? But and it's so funny you bring that up because in my parenting community, the Oh Crap Cafe, we've been doing Hunt Gather Parent as a book club, and it's my third time reading it. When I mentioned it to you earlier, you said it's my whole philosophy. I said this time I'm going to take notes. I can't take notes because the whole freaking book is note. Like every page is gold, you know. And I've had a couple of clients and a couple of friends who have really taken those philosophies to heart and really brought their kids into the center of their lives, made their intentionally brought things down to be a family focused. And all the kids are like cooking like your daughter. Like, oh, they're wearing bow ties to prepare the food and like making these elaborate vegetable trays. And one kid was like, we have to light candles. Now we have to have music. And so they're making these dinners, these amazing things. The parents are like, oh my God, this is so great. This is so freaking cute. And they don't realize that that was there all along. And the kids, like, if we just open that door for them and allow, and that takes intentional slowing down, right?
It's the slowing down. And I think the intention of like, you don't have to do this every day. So whoever's listening to this, please don't do that, 'cause then you're going to do the rat race again. And it's not going to work. So I think you have to look at it more as, all right, on Tuesday of this week, right? Let's have a dinner where let's pick something, or ice cream or pancakes. It doesn't have to be big. The big part is the conversation. And it's also when you have to first start doing that, because it's going to be awkward the first few times where you're like, hey, how's your heart? They're all going to look at you, right? So instead of just presenting and say, listen, or anybody listening, I heard this podcast. It really does make a lot of sense. Man, it hit me. So I kind of want to do this all the time now. How does your heart feel? And it's going to feel tricky, but let's go for it. Right. And if you start doing that, the conversation in your home will change. The way that you think of dinners, if that's when you're going to do it. But I think there's that slow down process, and it starts with the primary parent because, they're there. And I think the permission slip, it doesn't have to be all the time. You don't have to be perfect, but I think it's going back to connection. Moms need to connect with other moms. And
I think it's being authentic with your feelings, right? Like I did a thread once on Instagram and I couldn't believe the comments, something about how if you admit you're tired, right? Like you just got in at 6:00. You picked up the kids from school, whatever, daycare, blah, 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 blah. Everybody's tired. You're trying to set out a nice recipe or something. When the truth of the matter is, if you ask yourself, how's my heart? Exhausted. Maybe you would grab a little handful of everything in the cupboard and let's sit.
A smorgasbord.
And then let's do like snacks on the living room floor. And do you know how many comments I got on that? It was like, that was my favorite. When my mom was tired, it was the best. Cause then what was unspoken is we admitted the feelings in the house, which is everybody strung out. So why are we doing this? Let's just grab something and sit on the floor and eat.
No. And I think when you see, so like, that's why I don't post my daughter's food, because for a 7-year-old, she loves mussels. And so like, when you think about that, you're like, oh, she's overdoing it. Actually, I'm not. And they're easy to make. And two, and she helps with it, and she's learning a life skill. And quite frankly, we connect while we're doing it.
Right.
And that's the thing. Like, guys, I'm exhausted today. What we have is what we have, and it is what it is. But there are moments where you have to just to yourself as a parent say, like, I can't do this right now. Right. And when you get to that place and you've burnt out so much, and there has to be a time. And I think for me was exactly when I started taking that business coach, and he was like, you want to buy back your time. I thought of it as, I want to buy back my moments.
Yeah.
How do I buy back my moments with my friends and my family? Why am I doing this extra stuff? So yes, it was a business course, but it really it hit me as a mom.
Your house is a business. Your house is a business. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Our family, if we were to treat it the same way as a business, we would have a different outlook. But the burnout too is like you said, like that, it's time to evaluate. You guys, if you're coming home every day and you check in with yourself and you say, my heart is exhausted, I'm strung out, you got to change that, because you will go straight to burnout. And I think that's just a lot of parents suffering, and they feel like they don't know how to get a handle on it. So Chantel, we've been talking for an hour, if you can believe this. I can always talk to you for hours and hours, but let's leave everybody with let's go back to connection with your kids, connection with your people. Find your people. If you don't have your people, start looking for your people. And this may be awkward. When I first moved to Rhode Island with Pascal, I was a single mom. I had business cards made just with me and him. And I'd go up to moms, like, I'm sure if I were in New Jersey, I'd be like, I like you. I like your parenting. You want to get together? And people would be like, yeah, okay. And I'd be like, here's my phone number. So it can be awkward making friends, but we need that. We need real conversation. And the base of this is check in with your heart. How does your heart feel? And then the list, right? A list.
I think if anybody hearing this, the next time that you sit down, that you have a moment, how do you want the next season to feel? How do you want the next week, even the next day? How do you want the next day to feel? And if you say, like, I just want it to be easy, then create easy. And that means you have no expectations. Create easy. If you want to go on an adventure, create an adventure. But I think it's the idea of trying to do it all. And I know for my
No, you
point of
can't
view,
create an easy adventure, by the way. You can't.
but
Once you go to adventure, you've just sacrificed easy.
but it depends on maybe mom does want an adventure when you think about it, right? Because she's home all day. Maybe she does want to go, but she doesn't know where to go.
Right.
And maybe you want to go explore. You don't, or maybe you just want to rest. So that day you're doing, like, you know, sleepover and TV, whatever it is that you need, because if you do that, your kids are going to get a better parent. I also advise everybody, that's why I'm able to do this podcast. I have one babysitter. She is amazing. Find yourself a sitter that you can trust, that you know well. We've had her for 4 years, that you can walk away from and say, I'm so burnt out, I got to go.
Yeah.
And so I think being more honest with your spouse and your friends, hey guys, I can't make that. Can we talk on the phone tomorrow? I just can't do it anymore. And when you're having these conversations, I think your permission slip will come from those friends that say, I hear you, dude, we're good. Right. So like your friends will give you, your real friends will understand that, man, if she's saying she can't, she needs something.
Right.
And you know what? You'll learn a different relationship too, because then you're going to be the friend that you felt heard, seen, and validated. I'm sure the next time that person needs it, you'll have food at their doorstep.
Yeah.
That's how
I let go of having to be the person that responded right away. I was like, you know what? I'll respond to a text when I feel like it. You do not have access to me 24 hours, no matter who you are, you know? And so that helps too, right? Like that's frantic, you know? Yeah. Well, Chantel, always a pleasure. I could have you every day on my podcast.
we can talk for hours. We really could. That's why I said, I'm like, this is great. I'll clear my calendar for Jamie.
Awesome. Again,
right,
let
sweetie.
people know where they can find you to pick up some more stuff, like what to do with your kids out in nature.
Yes, everybody, if you can, follow me on Sensory Garden and Play on our Instagram. We're slowly building up our YouTube channel. You can subscribe there too, but we're not all there yet.
Yeah. I hear you. All right, awesome.
All right.
As always, you guys, thanks for listening. Rock on and have a beautiful day.
Okay, bye everyone. Just a reminder, if you need additional resources, I have Oh Crap Potty Training. I have Oh Crap, I Have a Toddler. Those books are available everywhere you want to find a book. You can also go to my website, jamieglowacki.com, where you can book private sessions with me, buy any of my courses. Those are really geared towards potty training help. And also I'm on Instagram. I'm not on Facebook anymore and I'm not on Twitter. I'm on Instagram, jamie.glowacki, and I do a lot of lives and usually posting a lot of good information. So those are extra resources for you. And as always, rock on. Have an awesome day.